data monetization and informatics, how to get the right ROI from data. And as you heard Mike mention earlier, we are actually running an ROI work group. So I'm envisioning collaboration with some of the folks here. But I'm going to turn this over to Sachin Arora, partner and head of Lighthouse at KPMG India, who's going to walk us through this final panel. Sachin, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, John. I just want to do a quick check on my audio. Am I audible, visible?
Fantastic. Coming across great.
Wonderful. And great to listen to the previous session and the sessions earlier in the day. Thanks for giving us a chance to come and talk about our experiences. We have a great topic, I think, with respect to data, and I think a lot of things are happening in the world of data with respect to management, with respect to governance, with respect to quality, and with respect to making sure it's available for business use. And what better topic than talk about what is data doing to help businesses growing them in their revenue and helping them do some savings at the bottom line of the company. May I request to move to the next slide? So we have an interesting panel today. I'll introduce them towards end of this small little presentation for 10 minutes. And then we talk about some of the experiences that our panel is going through when they are implementing data journeys for their clients or for themselves. So coming back to this presentation, needless to say, the world is going through a data explosion, and the data explosion is actually not just we were living in a big data world, an era where the only way to create data was ERPs and CRM systems, just about most likely a bookkeeping and whatever transaction used to happen, we used to record those transactions in those Oracle databases, SQL Server databases, and suddenly internet happened, cloud happened to all of us, and we could see data getting generated out of machines, out of humans, out of things, and that data we started capturing, but there was no value immediately visible in that because it was A, very messy, difficult to manage, and B, imagination of the business people were also not very high to what they can create out of data. So, and it's still a very difficult question. Some companies have solved it, some companies are solving it, some companies are building upon it. With that I mean to say they're creating new organizations, not just new lines of businesses, out of just nothing but data. So how do you quantify value of data? And of course, there's no one answer to it. And for every company, for every individual, for every persona, this would be a different definition. But we've created towards the end of this presentation a framework of thinking of how do you quantify the data, what economics is for ecosystem, and nomics, what do you make out of data, which is information, and how value that you create out of this is called informatics. So we're going to get through this. So before you, okay, so there's a next pause already happened. So this is a slide which is just to tell the power of data. A business which got created, I know I'm talking about a publicly referenceable organization which is listed in US Stock Exchange, Uber, which is nothing but data in the hands of customer, replacing a hand wave and creating a company worth $100 billion. Now, $100 billion is not something that I want to emphasize upon. I want to emphasize upon how much industry really values data and the businesses built around it. So if you really look at this lady on the left-hand side, trying to stop a normal cab versus a person on the right-hand side using the application to bring the car to itself, just the same thing, but it took a $100 billion company to replace a hand wave. And this is happening to us in many and more businesses, whether they are traditional businesses, whether they are businesses which are created net new in the digital native world. And this is happening faster than ever now. And I see we've just hit the parabolic curve. It's just going to happen non-linear way. And organizations which will not use data to really grow their businesses would just become the data monoliths, but not really data capitalists. Um, I was reading an exciting article about, can you move to the next slide, please? I was reading this exciting article about data strategy a few days back on a Harvard Business Review. Um, and it was very differently they categorize data as two strong functions that they can do in an organization. First is the defense mechanism. So data can be built for cybersecurity. Data can be built for making sure data is available across the different stakeholders, management, quality, cleanliness, hygiene around data. All of this function that I just talked about are the defense strategy of the data that one should have in an organization. The second level of second strategy that Harvard Business Review paper talked about was the offense strategy. Is how do you really make this data to bring some material dollar to the company? That is by either adding to the top line, which is bringing new business models, new cross sell, upsell. How do you reach to your newer markets, which are untapped markets, or how do you bring productivity into the businesses, do predictive maintenance of machines, the ways you could do some early warning system where some credits can be saved, and that defense and offense strategy come together, forms one single data strategy for the organization. If you really look at the slide that is on the slide on this screen right now, we're talking about different examples where companies have been able to take material benefits more on the offense side of it. For example, the first one that we talked about is a data center company, and I need not name those; these are very public names. Not so sure about their logos. I kept it without their real name. So they were able to save 40% of the energy consumption by just capturing data, and then the way they could maintain the cooling ecosystem around the whole data center. The second talks about ability to have the loyalty programs and be able to do repeated sales by just having the data around them. So these are all examples of where the defense was making sure the data was available and democratic and secure, while the offense was making sure that they were making real business impacts. It's very important that business leaders understand this power of top line, bottom line, and security ecosystem where the data can bring value to the organizations. Request you to move to the next slide, please. So this is the framework that I was talking about. Organizations were historically built with product at the center and marketing, sales, and everything around the peripheral. It is taking time, but the time is moving towards bringing data at the center, information at the center, and then creating an ecosystem around it. So if you really look at this at a very high level, early to the data comes the hygiene, which is more around the defense side of the data I was talking about. And the more peripheral that you go, it talks about the strategy around the offense and how can data be used for business, for real outcomes, whether they are working with partners, customers, bringing it to clients that you work with, or cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is single biggest risk that any organization run today, to wipe off their businesses almost in days, let alone months or years. So top line, bottom line, and the risk. If you have three broad strategies for your organization with respect to data, is how you can kind of bring value. Move to the next slide, please. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty similar to what I was talking about the previous slide. So there's an internal data and external data that you can bring into your ecosystem and make value of. And move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so just summing it up here, that these are the broad frameworks that we have, and where you could bring data, whether it is data lake, data warehouse, data governance, data quality, data management. All of that would give you the ecosystem to create data platforms, but hence you still need strong business sponsors on top to really have that offense strategy. So with that, I'll invite some of our panel members. I have Sneha with me. Sneha is the global CIO for Cipla. I have Mitesh. Mitesh is the CTO for Google Cloud Platform in India region. We have Tejasvi, is the chief, the data protection officer in financial services, as a thought leader. So with that, thank you everyone for coming in here and participating with us. So I'll start my questions first with Sneha. So welcome, Sneha, and quick question to you: how is data helping you maximize the revenue, optimize the cost, and creating better experience for your customers and distributors using data?
Yeah, so hi, thanks Sachin for the question, and good afternoon to everyone on the call. So typically, I think as an organization, we've really now moved a big step in the right direction on really starting to use data more effectively, and use data in its true sense to be able to take strategic decisions in the organization. So if we look at the revenue component, I think just getting all our data from our RTM to our forecast accuracy to the right mix of products that we really need to get into the markets on time, uh, to the entire back-end support system that augments or feeds into the front end. So getting our entire supply chain right in terms of the raw material availability, the capacity availability, and also looking at the customer's needs. I think because we've got data across all these verticals, a very high quality, good data, enriched data, and we're able to look at it in conjunction with each other, I think that's what gives us a cost optimization along with revenue opportunities. So looking at the front end requirement, the demand side of data, and looking at having a robust supply side of data to be able to meet the demand gives us optimization and revenue opportunities both in equal share.
Wonderful.
On the customer side, we have a lot of opportunities in terms of being able to meet customer requirements, fulfillment of orders, back orders. Even on the vendor side, for example, we're actually able to meet our entire vendor community, from giving them transparency to data in terms of what are the purchase orders coming their way, to what is the status on the quality of the batches that we've received, to the payments that need to go to them. That entire visibility is also end-to-end provided to a vendor on a technology platform. So I think we've actually brought the whole organization together through data, from our demand to our supply to the ecosystem of vendors and customers, to be able to really get the organization going ahead.
Wonderful. I think, Sneha, there was a beautiful articulation of the diagram that I was, showcasing a while back, where data was at the center, and businesses were built around it, and value of the data was built around it. I know we are working very closely with you, building up the
Yeah,
entire
yeah.
data lake platform with you. It's definitely a pleasure to having you on board.
No, so KPMG is really helping us and partnering us on this initiative. But just another point, Sachin, while we're getting data ready and while the business really now looks at data, I think you need a parallel track running which talks about the cultural change in the organization and the digital mindset of the organization also. Because if you bring in technology at one pace and you don't have the culture of the organization change at the same pace to be able to adopt and absorb that technology, then you're really not going to get the best on your investment. So I think we've put in our focus and strategy on both the tracks, the technology track and the people track, so that both really move at the same pace to be able to get maximum out of our investment.
Beautiful point. Nothing moves without the culture in an organization, however much investment of the technology and tools and platforms, including data that might so happen. People at the end of the day have to use it, and that is all about culture. And definitely great to partner in both those initiatives with you. Thank you very much. I now bring Mitesh to this question. Very interesting. Mitesh and I are old friends, and we go back to working together. Always great to have him as a senior mentor. Mitesh leads a large team of customer engineering, or I would say people who really bring technology to Google Cloud Platform. So, Mitesh, give us some instances, real world. How is Google Cloud helping in tackling, and making these organization data driven? What you are sitting at the center of where it is all happening. Give us some real world examples.
Thank you, Sachin, and I hope you're able to hear me clearly. And thank you for inviting me, both EDM and KPMG, for this, and pleasure to be here with Sneha and Tejasvi. For the way I look at this, Sachin, is that Google and Google Cloud are what people call themselves digital natives and born in the cloud companies. We call ourselves a born in the data company, because all that Google does, if you look at the original reason why Google was born 23 years back, was to process data. At the end of the day, advertising and search is all about processing data. And here are some, various examples. I can speak about a number of them in India. So if I look at, one of India's largest pharmacy majors, Dr. Reddy's Labs, right? Very clearly, we partnered with them as Google Cloud to build the next generation of data platform. And as part of this development, the teams have worked together to get data from different systems, whether it's their ERP systems of SAP, their R&D data, the quality systems, sales systems, etc., to create what we call that single view of the data that helps really Dr. Reddy's understand the efficiencies and inefficiencies in the manufacturing process. It also helps them, speed up the process of drug discovery, because now they're able to actually get insights out of the data. They're able to understand formulations better and faster. Not only this, Dr. Reddy is also working with us on Google Cloud's AI services to build computer vision models which have a variety of applications across Dr. Reddy's entire chain. I like what Sneha said, right? How do you make things efficient right from the supply chain to drug discovery to actually taking, this across your value chain? And Sachin, I do know that, KPMG is doing some fantastic transformation work in the sales and finance functions, at Dr. Reddy's Labs, and thank you for that partnership out there. The other example I can think of is a very large Indian conglomerate who's building a platform to monitor industrial assets in real time. This is a company that is there right from power to shipping to digital to airports and so on, right? And the platform that we are building for them will handle millions of data points per day. And it's fundamentally designed to offer streaming analytics capabilities to detect issues in real time, right? And it also helps them understand their physical asset performance. So I'm giving you another example in the real world of a conglomerate where they're using the power of analytics to really power multiple AI use cases. Some of those use cases that we've already implemented are anomaly detection, trend detection, forecasting of how their plant performance will happen. And we're also building an enterprise-wide data lake, with them. Another company down south, which is TVS and Sons, they partnered with Google Cloud to build a connected telematics platform, which processes data in real time from all their vehicles. And we then have multiple analytics streams that are deployed as part of the streamlining pipeline to understand driver behavior, vehicle performance, and also it powers their consumer app, which provides a lot of insights about trips that you make. An example from the financial services world is National Stock Exchange, which is the backbone, when it comes to transactions, right? They were looking for a platform that would offer performance at scale over large data sets. So essentially, it will support researcher journeys across the life cycle of their projects, right? And of course, as you know, being in financial services, we had to also take care of their strict and stringent data requirements and security requirements to be very much within the data residency and data localization laws of the country. So the Google Cloud team engaged very, very deeply with National Stock Exchange's chief economist, their EPR team, to really envision a data room solution for them, where we have built a data zone or a deep data zone using BigQuery as a technology from Google Cloud, a curated data zone hosting a feature store, and a number of ML toolkits that we're working with them. So that's an example from financial services. Now, another part is digital natives. Very clearly, they're using, several data really, really powerfully. And I saw that wonderful visual that you showed, right? Where you had someone, using cars and holding off, waving and stopping cars versus, using an app to, really do the journeys, right? So we're doing something very similar with a number of organizations. So if you had to book that journey for flights and trains and so on, ClearTrip, for example, leverages Google Cloud's data and AI capabilities to understand in-app performance and in-user behavior. So how did you really use that? For example, if you were booking a flight, how many people really looked at their hotels option as well? If you're booking a train, how many people used another option as well, right? So this really helps them offer much better, price options to customers. Another, related travel example is Ether Energy. As you know, they are India's primary, energy efficient bikes that they are, very well touted around that, right? So they're using Google Cloud's data and AI platform capabilities to ingest from close to 50 sensors on their scooters in real time to understand vehicle performance and driving behavior. And they are completely data driven, as you can understand. If they are an e-scooter, they're completely data driven. Another example, short video, became, or user generated content became so popular in the last 12 to 13 months during the pandemic. So ShareChat, which is one of India's, most downloaded, user generated content applications, they capture more and more DAUs or daily active users, right, to really be able to share content with the right audience. And they use Google's TensorFlow capabilities to build custom ML models so that your feed relevance becomes even better and better. There are a number of ISVs and SaaS. For example, very interestingly, ZeoTap, which is a customer data platform, customer intelligence platform, have actually, used Google's BigQuery platform to build a data platform for themselves and their customers. They really are in the business of helping with tailored marketing messages and what could be the next best user action. And you explained that, right? As to how we built organizations in the past where sales and marketing was around that, but now they're building an organization where data becomes the center of everything that they do. Finally, if I look at InShots, it's an app that we've used again and again for, generating for short news, right? They've shortened their product cycles from 1 month to 1 week to roll out a new feature, because now they're able to use a technology called data flow from Google to really help them do real-time data processing from their citizen journalists across India. Right? So these are some examples across the board. It's been great fun working with, of course, KPMG on a number of these projects. And thank you for the opportunity. Back to you, Sachin.
Thank you, Mitesh. I think a wealth of information. I wish I could just pen down everything that you said. Very power-packed and collection of many short stories, very powerful stories. Definitely, I would like audience to really perhaps would have made some notes as well there. But I think this is the power of data, and then power of data can really change organizations completely. The biggest organizations globally have realized it. India conglomerates are realizing it, and those who have late in the journey are now at the mercy of acquisitions of the digital companies. But when you're building up a data ecosystem in your organization, one thing that can go wrong is you build a bad kitchen. So while you can be a great chef, but if you build a bad kitchen, that could just one day lead to a food poisoning. When I say bad kitchen, means bad practices of keeping data, governance, quality, management. And with that, I would like to bring our third speaker, Tejasvi, who's a thought leader and author on the data management and the governance space in the financial services sector. Tejasvi, what are the key considerations with respect to data governance, data quality, program regulatory compliance that organizations must address to get the maximized ROI and monetize the data effectively? Over to you.
Yeah, Sachin, thanks for having me here. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Well then, thanks to the council as well. Has been a really interesting forum while we have been doing this day in and day out for the past 15 years. But at the outset, most Indian banks are experiencing an upward curve, specifically in indirectly monetizing data. And when I talk about indirectly monetizing data, it can be related to how we actually take these outcomes and benefits from having to crunch the data trove that organizations have in terms of providing value and benefits to the customers. So it can be as simple as having to reduce the anxiety of the customers when it comes to having to service them. Someone like a customer who would have changed his or her address, but would not have been looking at it in the mobile or in the laptop or even in the records. How do we ensure that, we reduce the anxiety of the customers as well as bring the satisfaction on the other end? And that's where, the narrative around outcomes from having to manage data and having to govern it, and the benefits that actually cascade from having to do that needs to be well documented. If you ask me, in an organization and specifically within the bank, I would not want to quote insights from the bank now, but at the outset, I'm more interested in having to understand how can I translate these value and risk realization frameworks into actual benefits and outcomes for the customers. So today, when I talk about data protection and myself as a data protection officer, it's more about how do I cascade this trust that I'm building internally for an organization out there to the customers. And this is what actually makes even an enabler to the corporate governance of an organization. And as a data protection officer, it becomes more imminent that certain enablers like having to focus on data curation, data collection management, along with integration, which usually a data office focuses on, is quite important as well. And till the last year, we have been asking certain questions like where does the data reside, and how can I pick that data up? How does an analyst, in fact, report or model using that particular data? What is the quality of it? And how well is the collaboration across, multiple people within the organization? But today we are asking extended questions. And the question can be around, do I really need this data? Like a nominee name, which in fact we take in an application form for a product in a financial services kind of an industry. And what is a legitimate interest or a regulatory ask or a contractual obligation that we have associated with a nominee name? And when I keep asking this question to a branch user, what I get to understand is a nominee, in fact, is not a participant in a transaction during the account opening process. But when I ask someone who is consuming nominee name during the end life cycle of the data, I get to understand that a nominee, in fact, is a participant in the transaction during an account closure. So it becomes all the more important to translate the context in which data is getting created and the context in which data is getting consumed. And this is where cataloging, in fact, becomes a very important aspect. Now, I think we all know that, we have KPMG and your services having to augment my team in terms of pulling out a metadata for an important line of business, which in fact we would want to democratize. And having to democratize it, reducing on our data provisioning cycles from weeks to days is in fact helping us digitize this particular business line better. And our time to market is in fact reducing. And further to this, I think it's a feather to the hat that most of the data offices, in fact, are picking up data privacy as a dimension, as a formalized dimension, which in fact is shifting our responsibilities to ensuring that data is secure as well in its landscape, in its form as it exists in databases, platforms, and importantly, as we move to the cloud, it becomes all the more important to understand what is the key management cycle, how do we manage our keys, what are the kinds of encryption that we need to take into consideration, how do we encrypt data at rest, data in motion, and how in fact we simplify this entire landscape and make it interoperable. And one other aspect which I wanted to touch upon is data quality management. I know we have been taking a benefits-based approach in India, at least, having to put across a certain metrics against customer data or even financial data. But taking a well-rounded view from risk, compliance, the second line and the third line in terms of coming up with a risk and a value realization framework will in fact make it more beneficial. And perhaps yourself and Sneha would have touched upon the platforms as well as the kind of migrations we are seeing as cycles when we go cloud native. I mean, the way I see it is cloud is a default choice for platforms today, and anything on-prem, it's termed as a bad word. We are not seeing on-prem as a default choice today, and this increasingly is making us ensure that we make this landscape simplified, and we also ensure that it's protected in a way that we cascade the trust, and we account for data sustainability in a larger way. And this, in fact, is having to strengthen our data value chains with the customers. So that's some of my few thoughts, Sachin.
Thank you, Tejasvi. I think you touched upon how to build, how to create a platform of trust, which is data-backed platform of trust, which organizations and business users can leverage without really worrying about, because data lives a long life from cradle to the grave, and it does a lot of things in between. And if it is not cataloged well, not governed well, not managed well, not qualitatively taken an account of, the outcomes could be wrong. It's you're playing with a fireball, and if it works in your favor, you can win the game, or if it works against you, it can also burn you back. So great conversation, and I just want to leave this framework of using data for three large purposes: to increase the top line, offense strategy; build the bottom line against the offense strategy; securitize and risk somewhat in defense strategy; governance, management, quality, defense strategy. And I hope you liked our session and look forward for listening to many of you. All of us are pretty easily accessible on LinkedIn. Again, a digital native platform. So figure us out, and wish to hear a lot from you. Thank you very much, everyone. And thanks all the panelists for coming in here and sharing your thoughts. Thoroughly enjoyed.